everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and today's video I'm going to be focusing on reading some fantasy series. So before I get into the video, please remember if you enjoy it to like this video and also subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I post videos every Sunday. So I just want to first say sorry for not posting for a few weeks. I have actually had really bad flu, but I'm all better now, back to reading, so I'm going to catch up on some of the reading that I missed out on. So in this video, like I said, I'm going to be focusing on finishing some fantasy series that I'm currently in the middle of. So the first book I'm wanting to get to is actually a brand new release, and it's Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is obviously a prequel novel in the Hunger Games series. I'd also like to get to a reread of Iron Widow by Yirin J. Zhao. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I will look that up and correct myself in the next clip if I'm wrong. And then I'd also like to get to first time reading Heavenly Tyrant, which is the sequel. I read Iron Widow back in 2022, I think. I can't remember too much of what happened in Iron Widow, so I'd really like to reread this one and then move on to the sequel so everything's fresh in my head, because I do remember I really did enjoy the first one. And then the final book I'm hoping to get to in this vlog would be Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. This is the sequel to What the River Knows. I read this back in late last year and I really enjoyed the first one, so really excited to get to the second and the final book in this series. So that would be 3 series wrapped up basically in this vlog. So I have actually started reading Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I'm currently just about 90 pages in. So the Hunger Games is, we've got the original trilogy and then we've got 2 prequel novels now. This one is following the 50th annual Hunger Games, and this is Hamish Abernathy's Games. The capital rules over 12 districts who are all quite poor and rely on them for survival. In the first Hunger Games book, the Hunger Games, the original trilogy, 75 years prior to the start of the novel, there was an uprising. The districts rebelled against the capital and they lost, and in penance every year they came up with the Hunger Games. This is where each district has to offer up 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl, in a fight to the death until the one lone victor remains and they're sent back to the district to carry on with their life. So this is the 50th Games. This is a quarter quell, and in this one twice as many tributes are put into the arena as normal. And like I said, we're following Hamish's Games. Hamish is another District 12 victor. I have to say I'm really enjoying this one so far. It's really interesting to see other perspectives in this world. Obviously the original trilogy was following Katniss's POV, and obviously Hamish is a lot older and a lot wiser in that book, and we don't really see much, we don't see anything from his perspective. So it's really interesting to get a book from his perspective, because you do feel bad for Hamish and where his life has ended up, and I think this is going to be an absolutely heartbreaking read because of that, because we know how his life ends up. So seeing him kind of like happy-ish at the start of this book, you just know that it's all going to go wrong for him if you've read the original trilogy. But yeah, it's really interesting seeing characters from the original trilogy as well. We've met a few of the victors that were in Catching Fire. We've met them in this book obviously when they're a lot younger, so that's really cool. And yeah, it's just really interesting being back in this world. It's very political, like there's a lot of commentary on the political world of today even from this novel. I'm really enjoying this one, and I do quite like that Suzanne Collins only publishes something when she has something to say, and like really she could churn out so much in this world and really like milk it, but she doesn't. And like I kind of wish that she would because I'd love to read like Phoenix Games, Joanna's Games, like a career tribute perspective. Like I'd love all that. But yeah, I have to be honest with you, Hunger Games is like one of my favorite series, so like I'm probably a bit biased, but yeah, I am really enjoying this one so far, and it's just really interesting being back in this world. The writing is really compelling so far. It's quite a fast-paced read as well. So like I said, we've got to the point where he's been reaped and he's gotten to the capital, he's met his mentors, and then I guess we're gonna get into the games and see what happens from there. So yeah, I'll check back in a bit later when I've got a bit more to say about this one. But yeah, so far so good. Really enjoying this one, and it is my most highly anticipated read of the entire year. So yeah, I'm hoping this is gonna be a 5-star. I'm hoping to love this one. So I'm just checking back in. I have finished reading Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, and I gave this one 5 stars. So obviously, like I said, The Hunger Games is one of my favorite book series, favorite film series, but I think this was a really good novel. I think it adds a lot to the series. It adds a lot of depth. So in the original trilogy, obviously it leads to a rebellion in Mockingjay, and we're really starting to sow the seeds of that in this. and I don't feel like it was fan servicey at all. I think a lot of the key characters in the original trilogy, like the older characters, like the previous victors and stuff, they also play key parts in this book, and it's interesting to see how they sort of got from winning their games to where we find them in Mockingjay. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. Like I said, it added a lot of depth to the characters that we already love. It added a lot to the series as well. I really enjoy exploring more of this world, more of these characters, more of the political system of the world. And also as well, it's really interesting reading about different games. I mean, the arenas are also cool. Obviously the concept of the games is not really very nice, but like the arenas are cool. It's just amazing that like the Capitol has all this technology and this is how they choose to use it. It's kind of like commentary on the world today, isn't it, really? You have all these like billionaires who have all this money, and what do they choose to do with their money, you know, and like the governments and things like that. So yeah, it's really interesting seeing the sort of, not comparisons, not like direct comparisons, but sort of reading this and then thinking about our own world and our own governments. Yeah, it really gets you thinking. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. And Haymitch, he deserves so much better. He deserves so much better. But yeah, that's this one done, and yeah, I'm so glad I read it. I devoured it in like 24 hours as well. It was just so good. So next up, I'm going to be reading or rereading Iron Widow by Yuanjie Zhao. So I did read this one a couple of years ago and I can't really remember too much about it, so I'll start reading it and I'll let you know a quick synopsis of this one when I've got to it. So I'm just over halfway through Iron Widow and I'm really enjoying this one so far. So back when I read this in January 2022, I did give this a 5-star rating, and I do think if I was reading it for the first time now, I'd probably give it more of like a 4 or 4.5, only because I'm just a little bit harsher now with my ratings. Obviously I can't really remember too much of what happens later on in the book, so I could still, you know, give it a 5-star rating, but I'm not going to change my review on Goodreads or anything. So in this one we're following our main character Zishan, which I think is how that's pronounced, and she's grown up in a place called Huxia, which I think is based on China. There's like a Great Wall and stuff, but it's not history, it's not historical retelling, it's like a sci-fi reimagining of China. And her sister was killed in battle, so the young men in this world pilot chrysalises and they need concubine pilots, and basically the men are stronger than the women, and the women, like, they use their ki, which is some sort of energy, to make themselves stronger, and eventually most of the girls die. There's only a very few that are able to survive the battles and sort of climb up this process, and her sister is killed by one of these pilots, and she decides that she's going to sell herself into this service to take revenge for her sister. Now there is a boy who she's not seeing because that would like ruin her virtue and things like that, but they are quite friendly, and he's quite a rich boy, and he tries to talk her out of this and she refuses and she goes. And literally within sort of the first 100 pages, she's paired up with a boy who killed her sister, and it turns out that her sister didn't actually die in battle. Her sister died because he murdered her, and she ends up overpowering him. It turns out her ki is a lot stronger than his ki, and she emerges alive after the battle and he is dead. So she is then tested, and it turns out her ki is really high, and she is paired with a guy called Li Shimin, who's actually a prisoner but also the highest sort of scoring ranking pilot in this world. He is a prisoner and he is basically forced to pilot his chrysalis. He actually murdered his brother and father. He's like basically a prisoner just like her. He's known as the Iron Demon and she's now known as the Iron Widow. And they have to sort of work together to help each other to survive, because even though he's like the highest ranking pilot, he is treated like a prisoner. And then at some point in this, Yizhi also comes back into the story. And I don't really want to spoil anything that happens, so I won't really say too much. But the three of them are kind of working together to achieve the same goal. All of them to survive. Zishan's goal is still to basically take down the patriarchy, take down the system, and stop the girls being raped and abused and killed, because when they become like concubine pilots, or the boys can do whatever they want with them. So one of the rules that the girls are told to follow is they're not allowed to like shy away from the boys' touch. So like they get raped and all sorts, and it's just absolutely horrific for these girls. And yeah, it's just all about her coming to her own power, but also take down the system that holds all the girls back. She just wants girls to be equal and have equal opportunities. She doesn't want to just be a wife or a concubine, or, you know, just there to marry and produce children. She wants more from her life. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this one so far. So I think the world is really interesting, like the fantasy sci-fi aspects of this with these sort of aliens. We haven't seen too much of the aliens other than the fact that like they've gone out to battle them in the chrysalis a few times. So I'm hoping maybe in the latter half of this book, or maybe in the next book, we'll learn a little bit more about sort of that side of things. But yeah, it's really interesting how this, like, not magic system, but how the sort of key energy system works, how it's like yin and yang, how all of this works. That's really interesting to read about, and also like I think quite unique. This is quite a unique story in that. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this one so far. I'm really loving the like reimagining of like a futuristic sci-fi China. Yeah, really liking this one, and I'm really glad I'm rereading this one because I actually forgot basically everything that happened in this. I mean, it has been 3 years since I read it, so yeah, really glad I'm rereading this one before I go into the sequel. But yeah, I'll check back in when I'm done now. But yeah, really loving this one so far. So it is now the next day and I have finished reading Iron Widow, and my original rating back when I read it in 2022 was a 5-star. I'm going to bump this down to a 4-star, only because I feel like some of these sort of plot points in this story were a little bit disjointed from each other. So obviously we follow our main character and she's on this like revenge quest, and that's all resolved within the first 100 pages, and we don't really learn too much about the sort of aliens until near the end of this story. So we go from the revenge quest and then we go sort of through her fighting in the chrysalis and her becoming more powerful within herself, and then we've got a bit of a love story going on, like a bit of a romance, and then almost suddenly at the end it kind of switches to focus more on the aliens. They're more kind of like a background plot in the sort of first 3/4 of this story, so it just felt like that was just a little bit disjointed. I kind of feel like we needed a few more seeds about the aliens that they're fighting as the story progresses, rather than just kind of mentioning them and then everything kind of is revealed at the end. However, I did really enjoy the sort of romance in this. It's definitely not a conventional romance in that sense, and I kind of like how there's no like infighting, and it's just a bit of a change to sort of normal love triangles in stories. I did really enjoy the plot of this. I did say it was a bit disjointed, but it was a fun read. Like obviously there's some very important topics discussed in this, like, you know, the oppression of women and things like that, but I did really enjoy the plot and how our character is kind of like opening people's eyes up around her. Like she wants to sort of get revenge on her family, who clearly don't see her as anything other than someone to be sold for money, and she kind of wants to like help her mother and her grandmother, but also like she still doesn't like them for what they've done to her. So it's really like there's a lot of conflicting feelings about how you're supposed to feel about some of the characters in this, and our main character is definitely morally grey, to say the least. Like she does bad things, but she sort of does them for good reasons and understandable reasons. And same with sort of like the love interests as well. Like obviously we've got a convicted murderer, but like he murdered bad people. Does that make him a bad person, or is he, do you know what I mean? Like it's definitely full of morally grey characters and really gets you thinking about whose side are you actually on. Like, is there, you know, are people just good or bad, or is everyone a little bit of both? And yeah, I did really enjoy this one. But yeah, I did give it 4 stars only because I think the story was a little bit disjointed, a little bit rushed at the end. However, like I will give the author some grace. Like this is her debut and I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Like such unique story as well. I feel like this is a very unique fantasy sci-fi, is it fantasy or sci-fi? Like yes, it's like Chinese histories, a sci-fi retelling, like sort of fantasy sci-fi. I think this is a really unique story, and if it sounds interesting, I'd highly recommend it. So saying that, I am going to go straight into reading the sequel, which is Heavenly Tyrant. This one is a lot thicker, so I'm hoping that we explore a lot more of like the aliens in this, and hopefully the plot is sort of meshed together a little bit better than it was in the first one. So yeah, really excited to get to this one now. So it's been a while, but I have actually started reading Heavenly Tyrant, and I am actually nearly finished. I'm about 380 pages in. I'm not loving this. This is very different from the first book. So I loved Iron Widow. I gave it 5 stars on my first read, 4 stars upon reread. And there has been quite a gap between publishing of the first book and this book. However, this book picks up directly where Iron Widow finishes. So I'm glad I reread that because I had forgotten a lot of things. However, this book is a complete like tone shift. I was expecting kind of more of Iron Widow, and a lot of the stories in there to continue in here, and a lot of the plot points to continue on into this book. But I kind of feel like a lot of things have just kind of been not dumped because they're mentioned, but not really as a focus as they were in Iron Widow. Iron Widow is more about Zishan coming into herself, finding her place in this world and bringing it down kind of thing. And you've got like the romance, you've got the fighting between the humans and the aliens, and then in this book it's just like politics. And I'm not against just a political book, I love a political fantasy. However, when I'm expecting more of like a sci-fi battle book, like I was expecting more of Iron Widow, and this is really not that. And I feel like everything I loved about Iron Widow is missing from this book, and I'm finding it a bit of a chore to read. Like I was reading it last night and I was just kind of like wanting to put it down and just go and do something else. Yeah, this was like one of my most anticipated reads of last year. I know we've waited quite a while between the first and the second book, and I know that was due to sort of like issues with the publisher and things like that, but yeah, this is just very different. There's a lot of conveniences in this book as well, so I don't want to spoil what happens in the first book, but we continue straight off of where we left off in the first book, and Zishan's in a sort of position of power now. She has a bit more authority in this world, and she really doesn't have a clue what she's doing, and no one really seems to care. And like, I think this is definitely commentary on how people can rise into power who really don't know what they're doing, who are completely unqualified to be in control and things like that. But there's just a lot of conveniences. So in this book, there's the women have their feet bound, and then in this book there's just like a magical surgery that can just undo it, and it's not even explained. It's just like, oh, they can cure that, they can put your foot back, they can just like do this, and it's just kind of like, and suddenly there's money for all these girls to have this surgery. And it's like, in the first book you were all destitute, and it just doesn't flow, it doesn't make sense. And there's just a lot of things like that in here, and I feel like some of the characters in the first book are just completely different in this book, like not even grown and changed because of that. They're just almost like just completely different characters. Like the characters of like Yisima and Yeetzy, like they were completely different in the first book, and then they just suddenly shift and they're just acting completely different in this, and I'm losing interest in it a bit. I'm really not sure how I'm feeling about this one, because I want to know what happens. Like, I mean, we've got about 120 pages left, and there's no movement to resolve anything. This is supposed to be the final book. It's supposed to be a duology. This is supposed to be the final book in this series, and we're not really close to resolving anything. And they're introducing a lot of new policies into this world and things going on, and it's like people click their fingers and things get done. And like in the previous book, if anyone wanted to do anything, it involved a lot of, you know, it's not just, oh, we're gonna change this and like you now have to have respect for women and everyone just does it. It's not like that's how it is in this book, and everyone suddenly changes their mind about things, but that's not how it works in the real world. You don't just get people to change their mind from one day to the next when they've had years and years and years of feeling certain ways and doing things in certain ways and having women be oppressed. Like, it's great that they're moving forward as a society, but it doesn't happen this quickly, and it's just a bit unrealistic. It's more like we're focusing on other things, but I can't even really tell you what we're focusing on. Like, yeah, I just really don't know. Like, I am liking this book, it's such a disappointment compared to Iron Widow, I think. I mean, I've got like 120 pages left. I don't know how this is going to wrap up, because there's no signs of anything wrapping up. We've kind of got like a deadline now for things to happen by. I don't think we're going to cover that amount of time in the 120 pages we've got left. So I don't know. Like, this is supposed to be a final book. I've got no idea. Yeah, I don't want to go on too long. Like, I am liking it. It's just, yeah, all the things I loved about Iron Widow are not in this. This just feel like a completely different series. Like, it's just odd. Like, I don't really know. I don't know. I'll check back in with you guys when I'm done, but I really don't know. I really don't know on this one. So I have now finished reading Heavenly Tyrant, and if I'm being completely honest, I really don't know what I think about this book. I really enjoyed the last sort of like 50 to 70 pages. There was a lot more explored about the world and like the aliens, more to do with the story of the original book Iron Widow, but the rest of it was just, I don't even know. Like, is this a villain origin story? Like, I've already said, you know, everything that I liked about Iron Widow is missing from this book, and this is very political, but like not even in a good way. It was just kind of like Zishan wants to, you know, take down the patriarchy and all that kind of that, and then she almost kind of like pushes that aside. And yeah, this was just quite disappointing, if I'm being completely honest. I don't really know how I feel about it. Goodreads says that there's only 2 books in this series. The final page says to be continued. and it was getting to the point where I was kind of like, are we gonna like actually get any answers to what's going on or what? No, we didn't really. We got a few answers. I don't know, and I just feel like there's gonna be such a wait between this one and the next one. I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm so disappointed because I really did love Iron Widow. But yeah, like for the length of this novel, like it was just a completely different story, but not even in a good way. With most series, book 2 is quite a different tone, but this was just like on another level. Yeah, and I was looking at reviews on Goodreads and stuff, and quite a lot of people feel the same way, so I'm kind of glad it's not just me. And like, you know, a lot of characters were introduced that they were just very like two-dimensional. We didn't really see much of them, and there was just so much introduced that was just never really followed through, and I don't know, it was just kind of all over the place. I really don't know, like 2, 3, I don't know 2 or 3 star, like yeah, bit of a disappointment really, this one. And like also as well, it's supposed to be about Zishan, you know, improving this world for women and stuff, and that almost takes a back seat, and it's just kind of like, is she now just out for revenge? Like, and the whole political side of it, you know, if you've read Iron Widow, you know what happens at the very end, and then it's almost just kind of like that's just all brushed aside as well. And I don't know, it's almost kind of like the author didn't really know what to do, like maybe this was always meant to be a trilogy and she just didn't know how to bridge this into a 3rd book, or it was always meant to be a duology and the publisher wanted her to write 3 books, so she's just kind of, you know, stretched things out, and I just don't really think it's necessary. Yeah, so the final book I will be reading for this vlog is going to be Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. This, as far as I'm aware, is the final book in the What the River Knows series. I can't remember what the series is actually called. This is set in 1885 Egypt, and we follow our main character Inez, whose parents are like archaeologists, and they spend most of their time in Egypt doing archaeological digs while she lives in, I think she lives in Mexico? I can't remember. She lives in a South American country with her family, so she doesn't see her parents for most of the year, and all she wants is to be able to go there with them. One day they go on a trip and they never come back. They are presumed dead, and Inez decides that she's gonna travel to Egypt and find out what happened to her parents. So this is full of like ancient Egyptian history, and like the culture and the setting is just so rich and so beautiful, and the characters were really interested in it. I gave the first one 5 stars. I really did love this one, so I'm really excited to get into this one. And I also love the covers of these books. Like, this is the fairy edition, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, I'm really excited to start this one. So I've started reading the final book for this vlog, which is Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. I'm just under halfway through. I'm not really sure on this one so far. So I really enjoyed the first one, and this one does pick up sort of pretty much directly straight after where the first one ends. So we follow our main character Inez, and in the first book she travels to Egypt unchaperoned and is trying to find her mother and father, and a whole host of things happen. There's a massive archaeological discovery. I don't want to say what happens because obviously I'm not going to spoil the book, but it was quite a sort of explosive ending. A lot of things were revealed, and then straight to the second one, these sort of things are kind of like the first 100 pages, it was almost like brushed aside what had happened, and we were focusing a bit more on the romance, which was fine. And then now we seem to just be having conflict in the romance for the sake of conflict's sake, and I understand the conflict and the reason why we have the conflict. I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I just don't really think it's necessary. I just think it's adding unnecessary drama to the book. Obviously we had the massive archaeological discovery in the first book, and we are slowly now getting back to that. However, like, I'm assuming there's going to be a library of some kind in this book, hence why it's called Where the Library Hides. I'm not really sure. This seems to be a little bit all over the place. I'm hoping that in the latter half of the book things will kind of weave slightly back together a bit better, and we sort of get the same sort of vibes as the first one, because this one's really thrown me off that it is quite a bit different. Like, we're focusing less on like the archaeological digs and things like that, which is what I really enjoyed about the first one. So I mean, like, I understand the second book's got to be a bit different, but you know, we had this massive discovery, and then something has happened now related to that discovery that's thrown a whole spanner in the works in Inez's life and the lives of those around her, and we're just kind of only just getting into that. So yeah, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this one so far. Like, I am enjoying it, but I'm kind of finding that I'm not really interested in reading it, so I'm going to push through and get this one finished, and yeah, we'll see what I think when I finish the book. But yeah, I'm hoping that we do kind of get back more to what I enjoyed in What the River Knows. So I'm just coming in to wrap this reading vlog up. I have now finished Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez, and I'm going to give this one, I think, a 3-star rating. I mean, I don't really have too much to add from what I've already said. I think sometimes, you know, authors don't need to make everything into a series. I think we need to get better at doing standalone fantasy books. I think that would make some works a lot stronger. I think this is a great example of that. I remember back in the day, you know, everything used to be a trilogy and there was, you know, middle book syndrome. It's like we could cut things down to a duology with just two slightly thicker books. I think now everything's a duology, and I don't think everything needs to be a duology. I think some things could just be a standalone that's maybe 500 pages instead of 300 pages. I think there was a lot of this that I didn't really love. That's just my personal preference, and it's nothing to do with me being against romance. I do love reading romance. I love a good romance book, but sometimes, like when I go into a fantasy book or like a historical fantasy book in this instance, and I'm expecting certain things from it and I don't get that, but I got it in the first book, I'm kind of like, So we didn't really get to the sort of archaeological, the historical side until sort of maybe nearer to the end. It did pick up in the latter half. It just was not as good as the first book, in my opinion. I still am glad I read the series. I'm glad to have completed another series. I did enjoy this. It was quite a fast-paced read. I, you know, read it in an entire afternoon. But yeah, just I don't think that this needed to be a duology. I think it would have been a great standalone fantasy, you know, and there was just like a lot of plot points that just kind of got dropped, and yeah, so this wasn't the best, but I did enjoy it still. Like 3 stars, like it was good, I liked it, but yeah, nothing compared to the first book. So that is the end of this reading vlog. So we have read and completed a couple of fantasy series. So obviously I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I then read Iron Widow and Heavily Tyrant by Yirin J. Zhao, and then I obviously read Where the Library Hides by Isabel of Banes. So yeah, pretty successful reading vlog, I think. So if you've made it this far, please remember to like this video if you enjoy it and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I post videos every Sunday, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye!